Hello learners, welcome to my YouTube channel Container Simplified. On this channel, you'll find videos related to various container technology. In today's video, I'll show how easily we can integrate Kubernetes cluster with a Jenkins instance. I'll show the various plugins that are required. So we will first try to connect to a Jenkins to a Kubernetes cluster where role-based access control is disabled. So as you can see, when I do micro Kubernetes status, the rbac plugin is not enabled. So first we will create a Jenkins namespace. So you can give any name. I have just given Jenkins namespace, and then I created a service account in the Jenkins namespace and created a token in that namespace. So we will use that token for connecting Jenkins to Kubernetes cluster. So I'll go to manage credentials and add this token as a secret text. So you go to secret text, just copy that token here, give any name. I'll give Jenkins Kubernetes token, and just you can use anything in description. So once our token is there, now we have to make sure Kubernetes plugins are there in the Jenkins instance. So I have already installed, but you can go in the available and then look for a Kubernetes. Your Kubernetes plugin should be there. So it will install other dependencies it need to connect to Kubernetes cluster. So now we'll go to configure cloud, and you will see in the drop down a Kubernetes option. So go to Kubernetes option, just add the name. You can again give any name, but for clarity we will just keep it Kubernetes. Now we need from Kubernetes config, we'll use the certificate data and the server details. So here I'll copy the Kubernetes API server details and the CS certificate. We'll just copy there, disable the HTTPS, and the namespace name which we created in Kubernetes, where we will see all the pods being launched from Jenkins. So the Jenkins URL, because I'm running Jenkins in a podman container, so I can't use the local host as the domain name. So I'll use the machine IP address so that my Kubernetes cluster, which is also running on the same machine, can access the Jenkins instance. So instead of localhost, I replaced it with the machine IP address. So you'll see this IP is same as the micro Kubernetes IP address. And the Jenkins tunnel, I'll use the 50,000 port, which is there in my security config. So I'll go to global security and I'll show you. So this is an optional. Even if you don't add it, your Jenkins will still be able to connect to the Kubernetes cluster and launch pods. So once this is done, we will create a sample job just to test our connectivity and see if we can launch a test pods. So you can give just any name, then go to pipeline, and in the drop down there are already provided by Jenkins some sample jobs. Just look for declarative Kubernetes, and the agent you'll see is Kubernetes, because this is the name of the I'll change it to Go, and I'll use a Golang image just to show you that we can pull basically any image which is there on the Docker Hub, and the default container will be the Go, which I have renamed above, and I just want to see whether I can access Go version, basically the Go binary within that pod. So I'll click on build now. So the pod should be launched in the Kubernetes cluster Jenkins namespace. So you see I'm able to print the version of Golang in that pod, which is launched by the Jenkins, and the agent was installed in the Kubernetes cluster. So yeah, this way we can just use any image and build and use that to build our pipeline. So you can have multiple containers. So I'll show you. So we can just copy that Go and I'll replace it with Python, and I'll show you we can access the Python container within that pipeline. So this is the way you can build Kubernetes pods and your Jenkins pipelines in Jenkins. Okay, let's try to print Python version now. I'll just quickly build and let's check the logs of the job. I think it's pulling the Python image from Docker Hub. So it will take few seconds, and because the command we are running is to just print the Python version. So let's see the pod getting launched in the Jenkins namespace. So you see container creating. So it is trying to pull the Python image. So you see it's ready state. There are 3 containers. So one is the Golang, the second is the Python, and the third is the JNLP, which is used by the Jenkins for the connectivity. So yeah, we are able to see Python version. So this completes our exercise where we wanted to deploy these pods in a cluster where rbac is disabled. In the next exercise, we will enable rbac and see how can we connect in such an environment where rbac is enabled, and we have to create a role binding. What we'll do, we'll create a cluster role binding. So what I'll do, I'll first enable the rbac plugin in micro-K8s. It's very easy, micro-K8s enable rbac, and I'll give my sudo password. And now we'll check the status of micro-K8s. But I have seen once you enable rbac, you have to stop and start the cluster for the changes to take effect. So I'll stop the cluster. It's very easy with micro-K8s, just a simple command, and then give micro-K8s is start. So it will start the cluster. Now quickly we'll check the status of pods. So if they are running, then we are good to go. So it's started state now. Okay, now we are back. I'll run the same job and I'll show you. It will get stuck and it will show an error message of forbidden access. So you can see the pod is failing to launch because it is forbidden. The Jenkins, the service account we are using, and the namespace is there are no permissions. So what we have to do is we will create a cluster role binding. So we'll go back to our cluster and create a cluster role binding where for now we will give cluster admin role to our Jenkins service account. So the cluster role is cluster admin, and the user, if you see, is system service account, the namespace Jenkins, and the service account name Jenkins. So once this cluster role binding is created, our service account has same permissions as cluster admin. So ideally you should create a cluster role where the only permissions are to launch pods. So once this cluster binding is there, we'll go back and we'll trigger the job again. Let's see this time the job is able to complete. Yeah, so today we covered how easily we can integrate Jenkins and Kubernetes. I hope this video was useful to you. I will be back with another video and another concept in Kubernetes. Till that time, take care. Thank you.